Please join me in prayer, everyone. Gracious God, you call us from our brokenness into the wholeness you have always planned for us and toward which you will fulfill that goal. Help us to understand what the impediments are to these changes we need to make that are present in the very systems of relationships that we have and how to overcome those impediments. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so our topic for this series is the change toward wholeness. And the premise is that we're not currently whole. We're not who we want to be or who God intends us to be. But God wants to take our brokenness and to make us into whole persons, right? And as we talked last week, we understand what wholeness looks like by looking at the biblical scriptures, Old and New Testament, and in particular by looking at Jesus, because he's the one human being who is from beginning to end a whole human being. So we're actually going to end up as he is, whole like he is whole. And so what we're looking at is, we've asked this question last week. Is this even possible, right? Or is this just the kind of fantastical thinking that some religious people and poets and philosophers talk about? But when you really get down to it, day to day, for ordinary human beings, can we do this, right? And so that's what we're looking at. And we're going to begin today with the premise, yes, we can do it. Right? But we're going to keep asking that question. So, yes, we can do it. However, it's not easy. What we're going to find in today's lesson is these changes are possible, but they're hard to make. Okay. And what we're focusing on today is not the impediments that we have within ourselves, but rather the impediments we have within our groups. In other words, we all have relationships. None of us are the Unabomber. We don't live in a cottage up in the Montana, Rockies all by ourselves. We all are embedded in relationships, right? From our nuclear family to our extended family, to our friends, to our, coworkers, to our church, to our village. We have these relationships. Well, what we find is that some changes we can just make on our own, right? They're not that easy. For example, if you say, you know what, I think I'm going to listen to classical music while I commute in my car instead of listening to the news. Well, guess what? If you're driving by yourself, you can make that change pretty much all by yourself. And so that would just be looking at, who are you as a person? What willpower do you have? But a lot of changes we make are not like that, because they not only involve what's inside us, capacities, willpower, but also what are the other people in our life going to do when we say, I think I'm going to make a change. Right? Because what we're going to find is that actually other people don't like us to change. Right? Now, that may sound strange, right? You may think people are asking me to change all the time. They're demanding this. They're saying I don't do that well, right? And they're rooting for me. They would like nothing better than for me to make a step towards greater health and wholeness, right? That's probably what we think. But in fact, that's not mostly true. Oftentimes, people in our sphere, often the closest people to us, strangely enough, they don't want us to change. They may say they want us to change, but unconsciously or consciously, actually, no, they want us to stay exactly the same for their own reasons. Okay, so what that suggests is other people can be an impediment for you changing toward wholeness. All right, so that's what we're looking at. And we're also going to look at, all right, how do we deal with that so that we can make these changes? How do we deal with these relationships and other people? Now, we're going to use two resources today to look at that question of people around us and change. The first is by the counseling psychologist Harriet Golder Lerner. Okay, so she has had a lifetime of counseling individuals and families. And her particular approach to counseling is what's called family systems theory. Okay, what that means, if you're a psychologist, is that instead of focusing on individuals and their interior life, like maybe Freud did, you focus on systems that people live in, which can be, again, as small as a nuclear family or relationship, but also including extended family, people you work with, et cetera. And you look at how the system works. Okay, so that's her expertise. And all right, so first of all, let's start off where we were last week with Martin Buber and with our Christian tradition. Right? Remember that for us right now, the goal for wholeness is an I to thou relationship. One subject to another subject. Okay? I thou, not I it, not subject to object, but subject to full subject. Now, what that really is saying is that you have one authentic whole human being talking to another authentic whole human being. And by authentic, let's just say what we mean is that you are able to say to yourself and express to the other person who you are, what you value, what you want, what you don't want, and you're able to convey to them both your strengths and your vulnerabilities. Okay? And as you relate to the other person, right, by the way, they're going to do the same thing back. But you're going to relate to other people. You're not going to use other people, but you're also not going to let them use you. Okay? No using is going on in this relationship between authentic person and authentic person. Now, that is just the Martin Buber that we looked at last week. It's also Jesus and how Jesus always related to people and wanted people to relate to him. If you read Harriet Lerner's books, by the way, her two most famous books are called The Dance of Intimacy, which is the one I'm using, and The Dance of Anger. Okay, the dance is the metaphor she uses for that systems theory. So actually, this view is also Harriet Lerner's view of what it means to be a whole person. All right, so there's a problem though. And that is, she says, very few people actually live authentic person to authentic person and do what we just described. They're doing something else, okay? And what happens is that in your growing up years and in your teen years, we all develop what we could call coping strategies, right? There's strategies that help us deal with our anxiety, our stress. And if the anxiety or stress comes from our family of origin, where we grew up, then those coping mechanisms are geared towards dealing with our primary caregivers, our siblings, people in our school, etc. Okay, so we develop these coping mechanisms, these ways of dealing with it. Let me give you a couple examples. One person may cope with a difficult, stressful situation by what's called overfunctioning, right? The overfunctioner is basically the person who not only gets the job done, but gets it done exquisitely and then does a little bit extra. They get it done early. They're on top of things, right? We actually like to hire these people. So that's one possibility. However, somebody else may respond to the exact same situation by under-functioning. In other words, you lay low. You spend some time in the basement away from the other family members. You do something to fly under the radar. Notice how different those coping mechanisms are. But you can see how somebody might start those coping mechanisms as early as age 2 or 4 or 7 or 10, right? So you develop them. And what psychologists say is that you did what you had to do. It was a good thing that you did this because it got you through that situation. But what happens is when you get your coping mechanism, you get comfortable with it. And then it's your go-to pattern. And then you carry it through your teen years into your young adult years and into your adult years. And you're doing it when you're 30 or 40, but none of the old players are around. Maybe everyone you're with now is a new set of people, but guess what? You're doing the same old pattern. Whether you are conscious or unconscious of it, it's what you do. Overfunction, underfunction, etc. All right. Now, how does this relate to your current relationships, right? And Harriet Lerner. What she says is, you're in this system and you've got your coping pattern. Well, guess what? Everybody else in the system has their coping pattern too. They all brought it from their childhood and teen years too. Everybody's got their coping mechanism. And somehow, awkwardly, it somehow meshes, right? Everybody's got their role. You know, the best way to see this is simply go to like a play, because oftentimes, if you have a play about family members, you'll see all the different characters doing what Lerner calls a dance. You know, they all know how to dance with their siblings and their uncles and their parents and their children. So they do this dance, okay, based on the coping mechanisms. Well, here's the deal. Everyone's using their old tried and true coping mechanism. And the reason why they use it is because it keeps them calm, right? For example, let me give you some other examples. One person's pattern is to be too intense, right? And I'll bet when I describe some of these, you'll be able to think of people in your family or people you know, friends, right? Too intense. This is a person who focuses intensely on other people, right? They either worry about them constantly, or they try and fix them, or they blame them for stuff, but they're very intense. They're always coming towards other people saying, you, okay? Then there's another pattern. Too distant. So instead of too intense, too distant. This is a person who clams up, shuts down, walks away. Very different, right? Well, let's say these two people are part of that family system. Well, you can see how they're going to feed each other. The intense person approaches, wants to worry about him, fix him. This person, that makes them nervous. They walk away. Walk away. Walk away. Okay, so that's the dance, right? All right, now, so you've got these patterns, and everyone in the group pretty much is unaware that they have these patterns, right? In other words, the too intense person is not going to say, oh, yeah, I know I'm too intense and it's a huge problem. No, what they're going to say is, I'm just a concerned family member or something. All right, so they have these patterns, but they're unaware of them and the fact that they come from a totally different time period and set of people, childhood and teenage years, right? Right, so let me tell you what happens in this system, according to Lerner. Somebody decides, I don't like this. I want to make a change. Okay, so you've got 10, 20 people in the room. They're all doing a dance. So imagine maybe it's a Virginia reel or something, or a square dance. Everybody's got their role, their part. Everyone's got to do it on time. And then all of a sudden, somebody stops mid-dance and says, I don't like this. I don't like what I'm doing. It's not good for me. I don't think it's healthy. I'm going to change my dance. Well, we all know what everyone else in the dance group's going to do. They're all going to say, what? No, you can't change the dance. We're all dancing here. You've got your role. Get back in the dance and do your dance. And you say, I've changed my mind. It's not good for me. I need a different dance. No, you need to keep doing the same dance, right? And so what happens is you say you want to change your dance. They react because you're stressing them out. When they react, right, their energy goes up. you react. They react, you go back to your old pattern, and sure enough, you didn't make any change at all. They won. They said, get back in the dance. They reacted, you went back to your dance, and no change was made. So this is what I mean when I say just deciding, I don't like what I'm doing or how my life's going, I think I want to make a change, is not going to work, because you live in systems where other people are going to try and prevent you from changing. So what's the solution? The solution is twofold, okay? And this is going to seem counterintuitive, but number one, the first part of how you solve this dynamic is focus on yourself. Right? Focus on yourself. In other words, what you're going to want to do is focus on them. Focus on everybody else in the room and say, what's wrong with you people? I just want to make a change. Look at how you're reacting. I knew you were like, you're focusing on all them. No, that just feeds all the reactivity. Nope. So you need to focus on yourself. And I mean, it's true, in the moment you need to focus on yourself, but long term, you need to start focusing on yourself. In other words, you need to start asking yourself questions. Why am I doing this? Why doesn't it work? Is there a different way to do it? Right? Those type of basic questions help you to get to know what's going on with you and what would be better. Okay? So, which is going to lead to your capacity to be your authentic self. Okay, so you focus on yourself. Then the second step is you need to be direct and honest in relating to the other people in your group, in your system. Okay, so you speak directly to them without distancing or cutting them off or backing away. Now that is really, really difficult to do, because you're either going to want to react or leave. So the trick here is, I'm going to talk to you directly and calmly and not react. And I'm also not going to leave when you start reacting. Right? So that's the second step, and that's difficult to do. And included in this honest, direct conversation is you want to communicate to them a bottom line. So you've thought about yourself, what you need, about the relationship, and you communicate, this to me is a non-negotiable, right? And you communicate that to them as well. Now, what you're going to find is this process of change is painful. It's not easy. It's going to emotionally and psychologically hurt. The reason is because you're going to have to look at yourself. That's painful. Then you're going to have to stand your ground, but not be reactive, even when those people start reacting through the roof and saying awful things. That's going to be painful. So the changing process is not going to be easy, according to Lerner, but it's possible. Because what happens, here's the theory. If you change your behavior, the other people in the group have to change theirs as well, because all of a sudden the dance isn't the same as it was. And so that's why there actually is a potential for change. But it starts with, I need to focus on the change I need to make, regardless of what these other people do. And you have to be willing to stick your ground. All right, so that's our first theorist. The second theorist is going to help us learn how to communicate with other people in ways that are non-reactive. This is a classic book by Marshall Rosenberg. It's called Nonviolent Communication. This is a book that the current CEO of Microsoft said that when he read it, it had a huge impact on his life. And he asked everybody in the company to read the book because he realized that a lot of his communication is violent. And so let me explain what a violent form of communication is. It connects to the Martin Buber in that it's any form of communication in which you enact this I to it relationship instead of I to thou. So how do we do this I to it? Well, we do it when we make moralistic judgments about somebody else in our conversation with them. We do it when we make comparisons with others in which we say, I'm like this, better than you, and you're like that, you got problems. That's violent. We do it when we deny our responsibility for our own behaviors and instead blame other people. We do it when we make demands, including demands with threats. Okay, so these are the kinds of ways we can talk to people which are actually violent. And so what Rosenberg advocates is nobody wins with violent communication. The only way everybody wins is if we can shift it to nonviolent communication, right? And this is very similar to what Harriet Lerner talked about with being reactive versus being non-reactive, right? You remember non-reactive is speak directly to somebody and be honest, but also be calm. That's also what Rosenberg says. So what Rosenberg, he gives a 4-step process for having a calm, nonviolent communication with somebody, even if that other person is reactive. Okay. So what are the 4 steps? They are: number 1, observe; number 2, feel; number 3, express your needs; number 4, make a request. All right, let's go through those. First of all, observe. The key thing about observing is that you're supposed to observe what's going on without evaluating it, right? And that's very difficult for us to do because we throw our evaluations into just about everything. But in other words, you're watching a dynamic, a behavior, a scene, a situation, an experience, and simply describing it as factually as you can without giving your interpretation of what it means. Okay? So the opposite of this is when instead of using I statements, you use you statements, right? So you, and then you make generalizations. You always, or you never, and then you say something that is very vague and general, right? You always cut me down, period, right? That's not observing without evaluating, right? That's actually giving your evaluation, your interpretation of what's going on. Instead, you simply observe, right? And describe, okay? So in other words, you say to your teenage daughter, on Tuesday, you came home at 11:15 p.m. and on Thursday, you came home at 11:36, period. Notice how that's different. I mean, you didn't add anything to it like, and you're always irresponsible, right? You didn't say that. You just said 11:15, 11:36 on these 2 days. You also didn't say you always are late. Right? Okay, so that's observe. Notice how that can calm things down immediately because the other person listening is going to be able to say, that's either factual or not factual. You're dealing on that level. All right. Then the next step is feelings. So you say, all right, you came home at 11:15 on Tuesday and 11:36 on Thursday. I feel. Right? Notice how after the facts, the next statement is an I statement. It's not a you statement. It's not, you came home late and you're not dependable. Not a you statement. Instead, I feel. Okay. And what you want to say when you give your feeling is a feeling word that you're feeling in your gut, in your heart. sometimes we think we're expressing feelings when we're actually saying how we think other people are feeling or reacting to us, or we're saying something about the other person, right? For example, you could say, um, I think you misunderstood me, right? I feel you misunderstood me. But really, what that statement is communicating is, um, I feel like I was perfectly understandable, but you can't seem to understand me, right? Instead, what you say is, I feel misunderstood, right? Or, I feel this. Or, for example, with the teenagers, you could say, I feel anxious or I feel worried, right? Okay, so there's a feeling, I feel worried. It's about me. Okay. All right, so that's feeling. Then the third step is to express your needs. Here's where you take responsibility for your own feelings and your own needs. Okay, so you could say, I feel worried when you're out past our curfew, right? And then your need, I need to get up at 5 a.m. for work and I can't fall asleep until you're home. Okay, that's a need, right? I need to fall asleep and I have trouble doing it when you're not home. Okay. Then the fourth step is you make a request. Okay. So then the request is, could you please be home by the 11 p.m. curfew so that I can fall asleep? Or the request could be, if you know you're not going to be home by 11, can you please at least call me and tell me when you think you'll be home, or some such thing. All right, so in communicating with your teenage daughter, you've gone through these 4 steps, right? 11:15 and 11:36, very specific and concrete. Makes me feel worried. I need to get up at 5 a.m. for work. Could you please come home at 11? Request, question mark. Okay. Now, notice how that request is not a demand, right? Now, granted, I guess if you're parents, you can make demands, but let's just work with me here. So you make this request for a concrete action from the other person, and then you wait, because the fact is, if it's nonviolent communication, they can either say yes or no. They can say, yes, I will be home by 11, or no, that's unrealistic. I need to see my friends. I'm not doing that, right? But either way, you have dealt with them as a full subject relating to a full subject. You have not treated them like an object, but you also have stood your ground. But you've done it directly and calmly without getting reactive. Right now, so that's the 4-step process on your end. But then there's another part of this, right? A whole nother step. Besides these 4 parts, it's not talking, but listening. So now you want to allow the other person to do the same things on their end, right? So you listen to their feelings, their needs, their requests, what's going on with them, okay? And then what you do oftentimes is you say, okay, this is what I think I hear. Can I reflect back to you what I think I heard you say? And what and they say yes. And then as honestly as you can, you reflect back the facts, what they're feeling, what their needs are, and if they made any requests. And that makes them calmer because they feel like you heard them. And that's how you can take a very reactive situation and calm it down and hopefully come to some authentic conversation about needs and feelings and hopes. And in that environment, it's going to be a lot easier to make your own changes because you're dealing with people honestly. Okay, so those are our 2 theorists, Harriet Lerner and Marshall Rosenberg, in terms of helping us do Martin Buber's I and thou kinds of relationships. questions, comments?
So friends, if you have a question or comment, again, if you could go ahead and click on the participant list, and then the 3 dots or the more section, depending if you're using a Macintosh or a PC, click on the raise hand, and that will raise a little blue icon that we can see. If that isn't working for you, you can also use the chat box and enter in your question. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your blue hand, if you would, please. Greg, I'm not seeing any blue hands. Let me just make sure if anybody has a blue hand. Janet, you have a question? Go ahead and take yourself off of mute. Janet, go ahead.
Okay, my question is, you mentioned Marshall Rosenberg, his book. What was the name of that book?
Nonviolent Communication.
Thank you. That's my question, that's all.
Thank you, Janet. Other questions? Bill or Jane Bradfield?
Hi, Greg. Question is simple. You just gave a detailed example of a family system. Could you, if you have time, give an example of how that could work in a work system, employment system, or does that not work there?
No, obviously, it works in any system. Marshall Rosenberg, he used to be a consultant to businesses, nonprofits, but he also was asked, believe it or not, to help mediate the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the Northern Ireland conflict. So he dealt with some serious, intractable, right, conflict using this very method. And so, you know, I mean, in a work situation, let's say I'm a mid-level person in a company. Let's say I'm a manager of some sort, and I've got some peers who are also tasked with doing similar things that I have to do, right? But let's say that one of these peers is under functioning, right? They're not getting the job done. And as far as I can tell, they're not even making the effort, right? And so it's not only harming the company, but it means more work for me, okay? Well, you know, all right, so in that situation, you can imagine that I might come to them and get hostile, right? Use violent communication. Basically use a lot of you statements. You're doing this, you did this, you're always that, and use comparisons. Meanwhile, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, right? Use judgments. We can't have a slacker like you, right? And then make threats. If you don't do something to change this, I'm going to HR or your boss or whatever. Okay. You can use all that violent communication, but it's actually just going to throw a bunch of gasoline on the fire of that relationship. So how this would work here is you'd go in, first of all, you'd set up a time to talk to the peer. You'd come in and you'd go through those 4 steps, right? So you start with specific behaviors and concrete actions, right? Things that you can actually name, the date, the time, what happened, okay? So for example, you could say, last Tuesday, we needed to get the Conrad Company report into them, but you didn't get it to them until Wednesday at 9. That's just a factual statement, right? It didn't get to them until the next day. Then you say, I feel, right? And what you want to say is, I feel you're a lousy coworker. But that's not a feeling statement. That's an evaluation. So the feeling statement would be, I feel anxious, right? I feel anxious, or I felt anxious, right? It made me, I felt anxious, or I feel worried, or, I feel embarrassed. I feel some feeling work, okay? And then you say the third piece, which is your need. I need to be able to communicate with the Conrad company a couple of days after they get their reports so that we can keep things moving on time. Right? So now you're saying something about you. On Thursday, it's supposed to be on Tuesday. So on Thursday, I can communicate with them and move to the next stage. Okay. And then the last piece is the request. Could you get your reports in on time? Or maybe a different request. If you know you're not going to get it in on time, can you let me know and give me an estimate on the new time so that I can, communicate with the Conrad company? There's your request. And then you listen, because they're probably going to say something and they could get hostile. What do you mean? You know what? I almost always get things in on time. That was a one-offer. I got a lot going on, whatever. They may react. And your job is to neither run away nor react. It's the same theory as Harriet Lerner, right? You talk to them directly but calmly, and you don't leave. Okay, so you stay there, they get reactive. And if you have to, you reflect back what they said. But what you want to do is you want to listen for their feelings and needs, right? What we want to do is listen for the parts that offend us and jump on it. But you actually downplay that stuff. That's like the froth on the ocean. You want to go deeper in that ocean, find out, why is this person reacting that way? And you could ask them straight out, what's going on? That's a lot of energy. Or you can just pay attention and say to yourself, what would make a human being like my coworker that reactive? Because the feelings and the needs are what drive every one of us, right? So you listen for their feelings and their needs, and then you reflect it back. Well, what I hear you saying is, you feel this way and you need this. Do I have that right, or did I miss something? And they go, well, yeah, that's a lot of it, but you missed this. And then they'll tell you something else. You listen. Okay, so also you feel this way and you need that too. And then when you finally get it all right, they go, yeah. And guess what? Their energy goes way down. And then they're more likely to say, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't get that report in. And you're right, I've been doing that too much. Yeah, okay. I'll agree to get these things in on time. That's how it works.
Thanks, Greg. Brad Prawn, you have your hand up?
Ooh.
Yes, I do. I just wanted to add that, as a lot of you know, Becky and I also work with Family Life Ministry and volunteer with them. And it's the same approaches that Family Life will work with you on. And a lot of their resources support exactly what Greg is saying here. So yeah, it's communication, it's listening, it's trying to empathize and to work together. And so wanted to add on to that. And if anybody has any questions for resources on that side, just let us know.
Thank you, Brad.
You're correct that Rosenberg, many like family counselors or marriage counselors use this nonviolent pattern when they're working with families or couples. But a great example of this, you can actually see it today. And that is that, first of all, the exact opposite of Rosenberg's method is in the presidential debates, right? They don't listen to each other, they interrupt, they accuse, they get very reactive, they make a lot of threats, right? That's the opposite. However, there's an ad. You Google it and look it up on the web. It just came out. It's for the governor's race in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And in this ad, the two opposing candidates are in the same ad. It's a political ad. And they're standing together on a stage, talking to the camera, the Democrat and the Republican, and they basically say, we don't see eye to eye. We disagree on things, but that doesn't mean we can't respect each other and talk to one another. That's their ad, right? that's an example of where Rosenberg wants to get people, is to be able to do what those two Utah governor candidates are doing.
Right. I'm muted.
You're not muted, Brad. Did you have another comment?
No.
Whoop. Then he muted himself. Brad, do you want to come off mute or you're okay? All right. Alan Dunham, you are on mute. If you'd like to ask a question, you can come off mute.
I'm not sure it's a question. I just want to affirm how much fun we've had since last class with the it and I and thou. I'm telling you, that is the most practical help that I've had in a long time. And we've had more fun with it in our marriage. It's I and thou, or it and thou. And all these tasks, and you know, if you're married, you know, there's tasks that they have to do, and I've had more fun this week using the word thou when I'm speaking to Roberta, and also this task list has become something more than just physically doing it. It's been doing it for thou. And instead of just a task, it's an opportunity to be a helping thou, or it takes it out of the it and the I. It's just an opportunity. And we've had more fun with everything we do now. An errand, you know, is an outing. You know, it's not just you know, a task to go check it off the list. It's an opportunity to be in relationships. We were gone all day today down to Half Moon Bay to get some plants, Smyris, that I found in the nursery down there, and we met some friends and so these tasks are becoming opportunities for relationships with thou. And it's just, we've had more fun with this I and or it and me and it or thou, but the thou thing is put into just about everything now. It's a lot of fun.
That's fantastic, Alan, and that is exactly what you know, what Martin Buber meant by writing that book. And as I mentioned last week, that book was a cultural bombshell when he published it in 1922. Everybody was influenced by it in all these different fields and parts of life, because they had a similar reaction to you and your spouse. It was very life-changing. What's, you know, one way to test it out is exactly what you and your wife did this week. But think about the difference between when, you know, those that you live with, whether it's your parents, your partner, your siblings, your children, those you live with, about daily tasks or something you need done. If you just blurt out a demand like take out the garbage.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I mean, you can do it in an I thou way with just that language, but oftentimes it can degrade into an I it, right?
Yeah.
You just want the task done. You don't want any, you know, pushback. And so you're actually just using the person as a means to an end.
You can
about how
put
different
thou
it is.
into, you can put thou into almost every task that you have.
Yes, right. You know, that's exactly what I'm thinking is all you have to do to change it is to say, darling, comma,
Yeah.
could you take out the trash? Darling is a thou word, right?
Yeah.
Not an it word. Or to say, you know, Becky, or, you know, you say the other person's name. Becky, could you, right? Or, you know, just the way that you say these things, you can make it into a thou, right?
But the way you react to it too.
Yes, exactly.
I call it her it list. You know, her it list is now an opportunity to be a thou list.
Alan, darling, I
We're
have
having
some
a lot of
windows
fun.
that
I
need to
just
be
wanted
done.
share that.
Thank you, Alan. Other questions, friends? All right, Greg, I don't see any of the hands raised.
Okay, so let me ask you all this. So Harriet Lerner described basically systems, right? So work systems, family systems, either nuclear or extended family, um, church systems. And basically her theory here is that even when you want to grow and become more healthy and make good changes, you're going to get resistance from other people in the system who actually want you to stay the same. Even if staying the same means you're less healthy, they still prefer that. Do you think that's a realistic description of people? I mean, have you ever experienced that from others, or have you ever had that reaction to another person who wanted to change?
Anyone would like to respond, go ahead and raise your hand. Janet, go ahead, take yourself off mute.
I just wanted to say I agree with you. Absolutely. The people, I have a granddaughter who this is really hitting home. Your examples are very valuable. I really appreciate this time. So please keep going. You're right on the money. I know it's the truth. Thank you.
Any other questions? Nothing else is coming in, Greg.
Okay, let me ask a question then about the Marshall Rosenberg. So in your own, we're all adults. We've lived in relationships since we were children, teenage years, young adult, middle adult, right? We've had a long decades of relationships. So my question is, can you tell the difference between a communication with somebody that has a lot of reactivity on your end or their end or both, and one where the reactivity isn't there, or it calms down and becomes something better? Do you know the difference?
Tally, go ahead and take yourself off mute. Tally?
It's when you are sharing something with someone else, as opposed to telling someone something else, and how they react. And sharing is a powerful thing. Telling someone, you can talk to a blank wall.
Thank you, Tally. Janet, your hand is raised. Janet, you're on mute if you'd like to take yourself off mute.
Sorry, I wanted to say that, what do you do in situations where everybody's so badly hurt? They're so angry. They're just shouting at each other. How do you, like the proverbial, take the bucket of water and throw it over the whole thing to calm them down, to get them to make I statements instead of judgments and false accusations expressing their anxiety?
Yeah, I wouldn't throw things at them. That tends to not calm things down, including buckets of water. But there's another theorist. This is the family psychologist John Gottman from the University of Washington. And so Gottman deals with the same dynamics that we've seen with Harriet Lerner and Marshall Rosenberg. And basically what he says is that if you're having a conversation with somebody close to you, and they start being very reactive, or you start being very reactive, in that moment, there's no good forward motion possible, right? because reactivity is not going to calm itself down, right? And you're not going to be productive in the conversation. So at that point, you need to say, I think either we need or I need to take a break, okay, and to come back to this. So what you signal to the person is, you know what, this is too emotional right now for me, or for us, but this is important, and I don't want to drop the conversation. So let's find another time to come back and do it. And it could be as soon as 15 minutes later. So you just say, I'm going to go for a walk around the block. I'll be back in 15 minutes. We can pick it up. Okay. It could be an hour later. It could be the next day. It could be 3 weeks or 2, whatever. But you have to get that reactivity down, because reactivity is another word for fight and flight chemicals flooding your bodies. And what the neuroscience says is that when you're on fight and flight mode, it actually shuts down your cerebral cortex that is in charge of reason. You actually are incapable of hearing, thinking, and reasoning a problem to a solution with another person. You are totally in offensive or defensive mode, so you're not going to get anything done. So what you need to do is to get those chemicals down, right? And you got to separate for a little period. Once the chemicals are down, then you can reapproach and try again using the Rosenberg technique.
Walt Campbell, you have a question or a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Ariel. Comment, Greg, something that I have tried, not always successfully, is to engage another member of the family in a
I can't hear.
By engaging them with a question for their participation. In other words, I may feel a need to walk through door number 1. Would you like to walk through door number 1 with me, or do you prefer to go through another door? Works really well with little kids when you're telling them you can do it at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, but you got to do it. Works less well with your spouse.
No, that actually that is a great strategy. I'm chuckling to myself because one thing you don't know about me is that I used to sell books door to door when I was in college. So I used to knock on doors, and I actually sold Bibles and Bible aids and all this. Anyway, what we learned was you don't when you're at the end of your pitch, you don't simply say, "Would you like to buy one?" Because most of the time they'll say no, right? What you say is, would you like to put down all of it today or half of it? Right? Notice how the question assumes you're putting something down, but you're giving them a choice, right? Anyway, so I think it's funny. But the principle, Walt, is correct. That basically what you're doing is you're saying, I want to stay engaged. Here's some options. Any of these look good to you? And it can free up that tense, altercation that you have. For example, if you said to somebody, let's try something new. Here's a couple of ideas. We could try this or try that. Which one of these would you like to try? And what that does is it puts them back on the concrete and makes them have to think, what do I want? And, versus you have to get away from these generalizations, the blaming, the polarization where you say, I always do this, you always do that. You got to get away from all that type of language. So simply getting concrete and saying, hey, this or that, it's helpful.
Okay, it doesn't work universally. I failed twice in the last 24 hours, but sometimes it works pretty well.
Thanks, Walt. Greg, we've got some folks who I guess have been waving to try to get my attention. Friends, just a reminder, I'm not on gallery view, so if you are waving at the camera, I can't see you. But some of your colleagues and friends on the phone here have been able to see you and have alerted me. So Art Plumstead, I understand you were waving your hand at the camera. If you still have a question or comment, if you want to come off your mute and make it, we can do so now.
Yes. Greg, as you were talking earlier here, I was thinking on a national view. You have to picture this. There's a cartoon that's been on TV about our political system. There's the donkey sitting in a rowboat along with the elephant, and they're facing each other, and one rows, then the other rows, then they go back and forth. Essentially, they don't get anywhere. So finally, one says to the other, you know, we got to start working together. So when you hear that, you say, oh, that's great. They're going to work together. But they're facing each other and they both start rowing at the same time. And they're literally not getting anywhere. So I would think they could have taken that message and fixed it so that they are rowing and getting somewhere, to put a positive spin on it instead of emphasizing what we all currently know is the state of affairs politically these days here. Anyway, that's what came to mind.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, and it fits with this conversation and what I said earlier with the Harriet Lerner, is that we make the assumption that people we know and we ourselves, that we actually want everybody to grow towards whole people. We want the best for them. We care about them. But this psychologist who works with family systems, right? What she says is oftentimes that's not true, right? What we really want is we want them to play certain roles that make us less anxious when they do so, right? There's a certain way that when they act, we feel calmer, better, whatever, which means we don't want them to change, right? Even if what they're doing isn't very healthy for them, right? I mean, here's a classic case of this, right? Just, let's take freshman year of college, and let's say that you are not somebody who did a lot of drinking in high school, but you get to this college and the group of friends you're with likes to drink. So you start drinking. And then it's November of your first semester and you realize you're flunking your classes. And you don't feel good half the time when you wake up. And you say to yourself, I need to stop drinking so much. So you want to just have one drink when you get together with your friends, not 4 drinks, okay? So you're with the group and you either stop drinking 4 drinks or you say, I'm only going to have 1. Now you might think in a perfect world that your friends who are your friends would say, oh, we respect you and your needs and we care about you. And if that's what you need, we'll support you, brother, right? They might, but they also might say, what? This is our drinking time. We always drink. What's wrong with you? Come on, here's your second beer. And they actually want you to drink 4 beers that night. That's what Harriet Lerner is talking about. And that's why we need to be aware of those possible dynamics so that when we try and make changes that are healthy, that are moving towards wholeness, we're aware of the blowback from other people we might get, and we're able to respond in a way where we hold our ground, but we're non-reactive and we're able to engage and be in relationship with these people.
Thank you, Greg. Ellen Brazil, you were another one that was waving at the camera. If you have a question or comment, Ellen, if you'd like to come off of mute.
Well, yeah, I think, Greg, a lot of this, what you're talking about, I mean, sort of, I'm not thinking it applies to me since my husband died a while ago and I'm not in conflict with anyone. But what I've seen is, I was thinking back on my career and also in my own family, competition really drives so many things. And there was this situation in my own family where you're acting out roles from childhood, and there's no way of getting away from those. While you were talking about Harriet, I looked on Amazon for her book, but she also had another book called Why Won't They Apologize? And I think for my own situation, sometimes you have acts of betrayal by friends and family that seem insurmountable to get over or forgive. And I know as Christians, Adam, we're supposed to forgive everybody, but sometimes it's very difficult. And I think that for me personally is the how do you get there? And then do you really want to get there is the other point. Do you want to establish a relationship with someone who is very hurtful? And when you see their perspective of how they think about you, is that something you want to engage in? Okay, and one more. And then I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal by a psychologist, and the claim was 1/4 of all American families are estranged in some way, and people even estranged from their mother and father, which flabbergasted me because I was very close to my mother. And it's a fairly common thing. So it's not unusual for you to be not talking to this one or not talking to that. And I come from a large family, and just talked to a cousin. She told me about her sister and the fact she didn't want to go to her sister's house for Thanksgiving, and because of COVID and how that caused a conflict. That's all I have to say. I thank you very much for this class. It's very good. Thank you.
Ellen, what you described is exactly right in terms of what Harriet Lerner herself was trying to describe, that we develop these patterns in our families of origin, and then they work. They may not be perfect, but they get us through. And then we carry them into our adult lives and relationships where they might not work so well, but we keep trying them over and over again. And yes, I also have read that book, Why Won't You Apologize? And it's about learning how to apologize to other people, which can reconcile, but also learning how to forgive people, which is difficult to do sometimes. But you're correct that in this question of how do we move towards wholeness, oftentimes those deep experiences of wounding from being betrayed, or maybe having betrayed or disappointed somebody else, those can really get us stuck. So learning how to move through those processes of saying I'm sorry or accepting somebody's apology, it's an important part of this growth.
Thank you, Greg. We have one more comment that came into the chat, and then we'll move to the people with hands raised. And this one from the chat came from Tanya. And the question is, what is the best way to approach destructive behavior?
I assume you mean somebody else's destructive behavior. And this actually is what Lerner's book is about. She has several case studies in which you're trying to deal with somebody else that you're close to who has destructive behavior, and she tells you how to deal with it. But the basic two principles are be yourself, right? Focus on yourself and speak honestly with the other person, including giving them a bottom line. So those two pieces. So the focus on yourself is, when somebody we love has destructive behaviors, you can get totally focused on them. So you worry about them, you blame them, you pursue them, try and get them to change. It's all the other person, right? But what Lerner says is, there's that basic principle that's always true, which is the only person you can change is yourself. You can't change somebody else. Only they can change themselves, which means all you can change is you. So if you're in a relationship with some destructive behaviors and it's bothering you, you need to focus on yourself. Say, why is it bothering me? How do I feel about this? What do I want? What do I need? Focus on yourself. And then you don't cut yourself off from them. You stay in relationship to them, but you basically say to them, here's how I need this relationship to work for me. I need this, and I need this, and I need that. Notice how that's similar to the requests that Rosenberg talked about. So I need this and this and this, and I'll do this and this and this. And then you have to do it. You have to stick to your guns. parents are familiar with this because this is called keeping boundaries with your children, making sure that boundaries are kept. So when you say, I need this and this, and I'll do this and this, then that's exactly how you do it, right? Even when they will try everything they can to get you not to do all that, but to go back to your old pattern. And so that's the combination that Lerner suggests when you're dealing with somebody with destructive behaviors. You can't change them. You cannot get them to stop the destructive behaviors. They have to do it themselves. But you can still have a relationship with them, but you're really going to have to know yourself and your bottom lines and communicate those calmly and stick to it.
Thank you, Greg. We have 3 people with their hands up. The first of which is Jane or Brill Bradfield. So Jane or Bill?
Okay, yes. Greg, you've talked about systems, and I'm going to talk about the family system a second. Within a family system, you have many players, of course. You have the parents and children, that you have aunts, uncles, grandparents, blah, blah, blah. And to be an agent of change is one thing when it's the parent-child, but to try to affect change in a family system when you're the grandparent or the aunt and the uncle is really challenging, and that would be my observation. Never have tried it, but that's just my observation. And it seems like it should be possible and important to do, but it seems like a big challenge. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is a big challenge, and I just recently read a book. I think it was by the Heath brothers, Chip Heath, and I'm forgetting on his brother, but it's about change. And it this book not only includes how do I change myself, how do I make my own personal growth changes, but also how do I get other people to change, right? So let's say you're the grandparent and you're hoping to be a change agent, right? This is similar to the previous question about what if you're in a relationship with somebody who has destructive behaviors. And so even though you can't change other people, there are actually things you can do which may provide opportunities or help make it easier for these other people to change. And I'm blanking on the name of the book, but yeah, they talk about it. There are things that you can do, and they totally dovetail with the Harriet Lerner and the Marshall Rosenberg.
Thank you. Brad Prawn?
Yeah, hi Greg, it's Becky here. Just kind of getting back to that, how to de-escalate or decompress a conversation. We've had several of them since May of this year, being sheltered with the demonstrations and human rights and police brutality, or the observance of that or understanding of that. But we've had so many conversations that it's been, I just kind of, with our daughters especially, but I've just, in my own communicating to the girls, we agree to disagree right now. And when it gets too emotional, well, let's come back and talk about it later, because I really want to hear what you have to say. But right now we're just going to agree to disagree, but not take it off the table, and then come back at another time. That's all I wanted to say on that. Thank you.
Becky, I did want to mention that mostly what we've been talking about today are relationships that have to do with intimacy, fellowship, friendship, those elements. But you're correct that when we talk about families and extended families, or sometimes even the workplace, we can get into conflicts that can become very emotional and intractable about 2 topics. One is religion, the other one is politics. And, so for example, talking with other people about like the Black Lives Matter or the anti-racist movement, or talking about religion, right? And so this book by the moral psychologist Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, called The Righteous Mind. I've talked about it at the Novato Church, but that's his focus of that book. How come we can't talk with other people about religion and politics, right? We get so upset with each other. And basically what he says is there's a good reason why we can't talk about religion and politics. It's not easy. And he explains why. And then he also explains what might be possible. But it's very difficult.
Thank you. Telly, you had your hand raised a moment ago, but now it's lowered. Are you wanting to say anything, or are you okay? She may have needed to leave. So Greg, no more raised hands and no other comments if you'd like to continue or go on.
Yes, so we got a comment in the chat that says the book is called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. And yeah, that is the book, Switch. All right, so let me tell you where we're going to go next week. So we've looked at the impediments that other people in our relational life can put in our attempts to change toward wholeness. Next week, we're going to shift the focus to ourselves, right? Can we make these changes? And we're going to be looking at the psychiatrist Gerald May, M-A-Y, and his book, what's the name of his book? Addiction and Grace. Addiction and Grace. And he spent his entire life working with addicts. And so he asks the question, how come some of these people get better and some of them don't? What are the ingredients for getting better? And that's the basis for this book. And so this book, just to give you a heads up, is negative about our abilities to make the change toward wholeness, but positive about God's ability to get us to the place where we make the changes. So it's very much in line with Protestant religion, Protestant faith, right? We're saved by grace alone, through faith alone, not by our own works. God is the change agent. We allow God to make the changes in us. Very much fits our Presbyterian faith. But you should notice that from a human point of view, he basically says, you're not going to be able to make these changes toward wholeness. So he gives a negative answer to our question, hey, can I make the change toward wholeness? He says, nope. And then he explains why. And it's very interesting what he says. He also, in the latter part of his career, went into spiritual direction. He's a Christian. And so giving spiritual guidance and wisdom to people who want to make these changes. So that's who Gerald May is. Any other questions?
I don't see any other chats. And I don't see any other raised hands. So I think we're good for this evening, Greg. Thank you.
Fantastic. This has been wonderful. And loved your comments and questions. And I'll see you all next week.